Hi friends, and welcome. On today's adventure, we're headed for Western Ontario. We're going on a deer hunt with Rainy River Outfitters. Owners Bill Kerrigan and John Simeon have invited us for an end of the season archery hunt. Now it was supposed to be cold and snowy, seeing the rut starting to kick up. And fortunately, if you were outdoors anywhere in the end of October in North America, you know it wasn't cold. There was no snow. In fact, it was awful warm and a lot of it was rain. Still, our guide and support staff, Pete and Marlene Taboni at Taboni's Bed and Breakfast, the place we were staying for this hunt, assured us they would do everything they could to make this work out, and along with their grandson Joe, they certainly did. Now after that, I'm going to address a problem that shows up at my house every year, usually about the first weekend of the firearms deer season. But before that, we're going to head to Northwest Ontario up to Rainy River Outfitters and try to get an end of the season bow hunt in before it comes time to pick up that firearm. Hey, I'm your host, Kyle Randall. This is my Wilderness Journal, and we're headed to Western Ontario to hunt some of the biggest bodied deer you'll see anywhere. When we got to Rainy River, Taboni's Bed and Breakfast, same thing. The accommodations were great, and Marlene's home cooking was more than enough to even keep Tom happy. And after getting our stuff around the next day, Pete had us out in the stand. Within 24 hours, we were deer hunting. Well, Tom, here we are in Canada. How's the foot?
Yeah, foot's doing good. Made it up the ladder.
Yeah, well, that's good. I saw that.
Yeah, so that's a start.
We're here at Rainy River Outfitters, and it's our first evening in the stand. We actually got here, and everything's ready to go. We got out here. I said, you know what? Might as well get out in the trees. This is bush hunting right on the edge of farm country, just north of Baudette, Minnesota. And hopefully, we're going to find us a buck. And then, Tom's hoping we find another one. So, John and Bill, we appreciate it. Certainly Pete and Marlene, folks up at Taboni's, they're already treating us better than we deserve. We're going to get quiet and see if we can't find a deer. And a little more than an hour later, I was seeing movement in the bush. Our first deer was working in toward our feed station. Pretty good sized doe was standing there sizing the area up and then worked her way in. I hadn't seen any other deer following her, so I put my bow down, and just as I did, she snapped her head up and looked out through the brush. There was a small buck hovering out on the edge, just keeping an eye on her. He wasn't coming in, at least not yet. And then finally he worked up the courage and started circling in toward her. He worked up right underneath us. And then just like the big boys, went stiff-legged stomping and run her out. But for some reason he stopped, turned and came in and had himself a little bit to eat. That is until he saw her turn and leave. He watched it for a few seconds. And then he turned and walked off the other way. Just at last light, I picked up my bow. I could see another deer was coming in. We watched as she worked her way through and then fed on out into the field. We'd seen some deer, just not any mature deer, at least not yet. We were seeing does and fawns, a few young bucks coming to the feed station. What we weren't seeing much of was the older deer. In this much wind and warmth, they just weren't up on their feet in the daylight moving. We did see one other hunter while we were there, though. Already white for the winter, this little weasel showed up and grabbed a mouse, trap and all, that we'd just pitched out the back door of a gun blind. He didn't even wait for us to open the trap and dump out the mouse. That, friends, is tenacity. Nothing goes to waste in the bush. Meals are just too hard to come by. And speaking of hard to come by, the next morning I had to come by a reason or two to give Tom why we couldn't quit and just go trick-or-treating. It must be Halloween. Boo. That's pretty scary.
You got the mountain in the background.
No, got rain clouds in the background.
Day 2.
And not long after daylight on day 2, we were watching a group of does and fawns piled up at the fence behind us. When they did start moving, some of them went down the field behind us. Some of them jumped the fence and came across in front of us. One of them even hooked around and fed right beneath us. We were totally surrounded by deer. There were does and fawns in every direction. Unfortunately, there weren't any shooters, at least not yet. And on top of that, the possibility of being caught goes up and up. So I can't really say it made me sad when they finally decided to go off to bed. And then, not 20 minutes after they left, I could see antlers over by the fence where the does had stood. This looked to be at least an 8-point, probably a 3-year-old deer. He didn't have that great a rack, but the body on these animals is incredible, so you have to be careful. It's kind of a reverse Texas thing. The deer are physically so big it actually makes the antlers look a little smaller. Either way, he wasn't coming. I was grunting, I was trying to call him in, but he was leaving. And then I saw why. There was another buck out in the brush. This appeared to be a younger, smaller deer. I grunted at him, but they just kept working the air and staring out in the other direction. And then I saw why. There was another buck, looked like a little bit heavier but narrower 8-point, and he was working right out in front of us. The camera's view was a little obstructed, but I certainly had a shot while he was standing out there. I'd already decided I wasn't going to shoot, and then the other 2 bucks started pushing and shoving back to our right, and he turned and headed off in their direction, pretty much guaranteeing that I wasn't going to change my mind.
Okay, here comes one.
Still, I kept watching. And then all 3 of them turned and started working back in toward us. They were going to cross out in front of us, right out in the open. If I wanted to change my mind, if I was going to second guess myself, this would be my chance. I stood there for long moments just watching, thinking about it. I even grunted at him a little bit, see could I pull him in even a little bit closer. They were within range, but whenever you're bow hunting, closer is always better. Still, I hadn't changed my mind. I pretty much decided I was going to pass on these deer. But I will admit, my friends, the longer they stood there, the more it tested my resolve. We had come a long way, the weather was definitely against us, and these 2 bucks seemed like pretty much a gift right out there in front of me. So, finally, they hung around so long that, yeah, I still passed. I could clearly hear Tom behind me calling me names, and I knew that when I got home a few of you would chime right in and help him. But the simple truth was, I'd come here looking for something just a little older. The simple truth, my friends, is sometimes you have to pass good deer in order to let them hang around long enough to become great deer. And I was certain that when we came back next year, should these guys make it through, there'd be a couple of real whoppers to go chase after. That's the decision that every hunter has to make, and I firmly believe that every deer is a trophy. You just need to get the right person in front of it. These were certainly a couple of good deer, but for now at least, I just wasn't that guy. We watched as the bucks did a little sparring and then started working their way out of the field. I did take a moment to try to explain it to Tom, and then I thought better of it.
Those are deer, Tom.
Little did I know, for the next 2 days, it was gonna rain. Those were a couple of dandy 3-year-olds, and I could have taken a run at one of them. I had him right up there in front of my stand, but I know that this place has an earned reputation for coughing up some real dandy bucks, so I was perfectly okay letting that one walk. And that is until it started raining and didn't quit till the end of the season. We did stick around for an extra day, hunt the opener of their firearm season. It's the exact same tag, so we decided even though it was still warm, still wet, we'd give that a try. And despite the intermittent rain, we did go out that opening day. We sat and watched, and we did see some deer. A doe working her way through, a young buck watching her.
Stop. They're just gonna go to bed.
And then another small buck tailing her back into the bush.
Boy, they can disappear in a hurry in here.
But by midday it was clear the deer were going to bed and the weather was coming back in. It was time.
Everybody's gotta believe in something. I believe we should go get lunch. Sounds like a plan.
Going to lunch is always a good thing to believe in. And unfortunately, even though we would have liked to stayed for a few more days, waited for the weather to change, we were just out of time. Now on the upside, when we got in that evening, we did get a chance to see young Joe Taboni's very first ever deer. Joseph Taboni, your very first buck?
Yeah.
First deer of any kind?
Yeah.
Congratulations, that's awesome. Nice 8-point buck. Tell me exactly how did this happen? He didn't run up and just surrender.
No, we seen him. Well, we thought he was a 4-pointer. We walked a little farther. We didn't really count the horns. We just seen he had horns. Waited till he went broadside and shot him. Missed the first one, but.
Wait. I didn't hear this before. Missed the first one?
I guess so.
Was you just being a good conservator, an honest deer hunter, and giving him a warning shot?
He didn't
Was that what you were doing, or no?
Kind of, sort of.
Yeah, that's a good man you are.
I'll say that.
That's it. You're well on your way. I can see that right now. So after we missed the first time, what'd the deer do?
Just started to run and I shot him behind the leg.
Yeah, looks like you hit him pretty good. He didn't go far?
Nope, dropped right there.
All right. Now, how'd you get this deer to come? He just come waltzing in, or did you call him with that grunt call?
Called him.
Yeah? And that works, eh?
Yeah.
Who taught you how to do that?
You did.
Rainy River Outfitters delivers again, even for the Tabonis.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are all right. What do you think, Grandpa?
Well, I'm really, really happy. I was a lot happier earlier, I tell you, we tried it hard. Hey, Joe?
You were really happy until he made you drag it then.
Oh, no, I was so proud of him, it's unbelievable.
Well, I'm glad we was here to see it.
Gets my fee.
It hasn't paid this guide fee yet, huh?
Hey, Joe?
All right. Congratulations, men. You guys made a good pair.
Thank you.
Congratulations again, Big Joe, and certainly thanks again to Pete and Marlene Pete Jr., truly Bill and John, everybody up at Rainy River Outfitters and Taboni's Bed and Breakfast. We did have a great time, and we're already making plans to go back next year when hopefully the weather's a little more normal. I'm not kidding. I know this area produces some dandy deer, and I'm going to go back and try to get me one. Now, let's shift gears a little bit. I want to talk to you about a problem that shows up in my driveway every year, usually the first weekend of the firearms deer season. Friends, are you that guy? Are you that gal in your family? The first weekend after the firearms opener and your gun room is full of all other people's stuff? Yeah, well, that's me, at least in this family. And I have to tell you right up front, if I had just $1 for every time I heard somebody say, well, my scope got bumped, or my sights are off, or I was using a different load, or somebody else sighted it in for me and it ain't right, well, let's just say Tina and I could go on vacation for a month. Yeah, the truth is, you need to be not only familiar, but confident with your own weapon. So I'm gonna go over real quick what you can do if your scope does get bumped, if your sights aren't on, so you can get back in the field. There's a lot of season left. You wanna go out with confidence though, that the next time will be your time. I'm gonna start with a youth gun and we're gonna work our way up through all the different common uses. And friends, we are gonna go fast. So TiVo this, record it if you wanna refer back to it. I wanna get this done so I can get back out hunting. It's a little bit windy, friends, so I'm going to talk rather loud. But the first thing you want to start with is a safe place to fire your weapon. We're blessed to have this old gravel pit. It's a great spot to shoot, but make sure wherever you're shooting, it's a safe place. Know what you're shooting at and what's behind that. Secondly, you're going to want to have eyes and ears. And I know all you big tough guys out there shoot your rifle, your shotgun all the time without them. But the simple truth is, the next time you go out hunting, you're going to want to be able to hear that deer coming, and you're certainly going to want to be able to see it coming. Use a little safety, a little bit of precaution. You'll be glad you did. Now, let's start with that youth gun. This is a real common problem. A lot of people take their young people out, but they don't put any time into sighting in their weapons. They're very little, and it becomes a problem when their young person gets a shot. Well, let's just say it doesn't work out very well. Always, always, always practice gun safety. Make sure everything's on safe. Make sure everything's empty before you get started. A couple of important things too to remember. Always sight in with the round with the bullet you're gonna hunt with. Don't use something else because it's less expensive. Every round goes through every weapon a little different. So do yourself a favor and use the ammunition that your young person is gonna hunt with. One other thing, friends, whenever I sight in my or anybody else's rifle or shotgun, I always try to use a shot vise, a lead sled, something to help hold that weapon exactly where I need it to be. This isn't the time to prove your marksmanship. This is the time to prove your weapon is shooting where it's supposed to. Once you're certain nobody's downrange, the rest is real simple. It's breathe, hold, squeeze. This one's hitting a little bit low and a little bit right. It's a 1/4 inch adjustment per click, so we're going to go 2 to the left and 3 up, and it should be right on the money. We'll shoot her one more time, make sure it's dialed in, but it should be right on. Next, just because I'm down here, I'm going to put one down through old Whisper. Now I got to tell you, this rifle has been very, very good to me and everybody else in my family, and I have total confidence in it. But I still shoot it every year before every season and before every hunting trip, no matter where we go. You never know what really might happen, and the confidence that knowing it's right there, you just can't replace that. That's the ultimate. And when you got an old friend like this, well, let's just say you want to stay old friends. She never lets me down. I want to talk about a shotgun for a minute. A lot of us live in a part of the state where you have to hunt with a shotgun or a black powder gun, a pistol. That's a great tool, all of them are, but a lot of times we're using the same shotgun we hunt birds with, and that's all right. Couple of things to remember though. A, any choke will fire a rifled slug, but an improved cylinder is proven to be the very best of all of those. I highly suggest it, whether you're shooting a pump gun, an automatic like this. A lot of the new modern deer slayer barrels work great. A lot of shotguns have interchangeable barrels, great sighting systems. I highly suggest them, but if you're gonna use a regular shotgun, at least put a set of upgraded sights on it so you can adjust them a lot easier. And when it comes to adjusting iron sights, whether it's on your rifle or your shotgun, it can be the most difficult to do. I highly suggest you memorize the front, opposite, rear, same theorem, FORS. And all that means is wherever you print on the paper, wherever your slug hits the target, if you're trying to move a front sight, which in many cases is near impossible, you got to move it in the opposite direction of the bullet strike. Most of the time we're dealing with the rear sight, and that sight you want to move in the same direction. So if your shot is low, you want to bring your sight up. If it's to the left, you want to move it to the right. You want to move the rear sight in the direction you want your bullet to strike. Friends, that's just a general overlay of how you can sight or resight your weapon. There's bore sighters, there's all kinds of scopes and dots and all kind of iron sights out there, I know. But this will give you the basics so you can get dialed in or redialed if you're having some trouble. It's what you're going to see if you're one of those folks in my driveway the weekend after the opener. I do want to touch base though on the black powder guns before I go. This is my personal black powder gun. If you're shooting a modern muzzleloader, you sight it in exactly the same as you do a modern rifle. Just make sure you use the same powder, the same charge, and the same bullet every single time, because they all shoot different. And never shoot your gun clean. Always sight it in dirty. They shoot a lot better that way. Now, if you're going to use one of the old school ball and cap or flintlock style black powder guns, I highly suggest you reach out to a mentor and have them help you through the basics. It'll speed up the process a lot and you'll be a lot happier with it. Either way, take the time, go out and build some confidence in your weapon and in yourself. Shooting's a lot of fun. Take the whole family, we do. And if you've got that confidence, when you get your next chance, you'll be ready for it. Hey, I hope this helps you. I hope you save this, and above all, I hope you have a great rest of the season. Yes, last year's Outdoor Expo signs do make great target holders. Well, there you have it. My friend Tom Dewey will say, there's a lot of air around those deer, and he's right. But I firmly believe that if you spend a little more time sighting in, a little more time practicing, you can certainly narrow that challenge. You need to go out there knowing that your firearm shoots where you point it. And I truly hope you've already had a great season. And if you haven't, it isn't over yet. Get back out there. Maybe we'll run into you somewhere out in the field. And if we do, well, you know we're going to stop and share that cup and fire a good deer story. If you've already been successful, send us a picture, or better yet, come by and see us in Cadillac at our expo in January. Everybody in the family will be there, and they love to hear a good deer story just as much as I do. We truly hope to see you there too, friends, but if for some reason we don't catch up to you, well, then I'll wait for you right back here so we can share another adventure from my Wilderness Journal.